On Monday morning at 7:35 a.m. Italian time, Easter Monday, Papa Francesco, Pope Francis, passed away from a stroke. Popes are elected and serve until their death, unless they resign as the previous Pope Benedict did. And so the death of a pope and the election of a new one is a very, very big deal. Given that this year is a Papal Jubilee, with special events and pilgrims from all over the world, the forthcoming ceremonies are going to change a lot of plans. And so I called Margherita Capponi, our most trusted guide in Rome. Margherita has known Ariana, my business partner and cousin, for many, many years, and we can always rely on her boundless energy and love for history. And we also appreciate her restaurant recommendations and her characteristic Roman sarcasm. To get a handle on what you can expect in Rome over the next few weeks, I asked Margherita to join me on Zoom.
So this is Margherita Capponi. I am an archaeologist and a tour guide. I am an archaeologist more than 35 years, and I'm guiding, started at the end of the Jubilee of 2000. So I am a tour guide, qualified tour guide, licensed tour guide from 2000. I am Roman. My family is Roman from 7 generations. To be a real Roman, you are requested to be for 7 generations in Rome, and we are. We moved 2 kilometers, so we are always living in the same place in the area of the Colosseum. So I am guiding in Rome, in the surroundings, in the Vatican, in the archaeological sites, in town. I'm not going outside because when I go out from the Vatican, for the Aurelian walls that are surrounding Rome, I'm not feeling safe and well.
And that's that Roman sarcasm on display. If you're not getting the joke, Margherita is referring to the Aurelian walls, the wall built around Rome by the Emperor Aurelian in the year 271 Common Era. There are many large portions of the Aurelian Wall still standing, most notably right outside of the Roma Termini train station. It's on your right when you exit, and it's the first of many ancient monuments that are just erupting from the crevices of Rome.
And I am also an official tour guide of the Vatican Museums and of the Basilica of St. Peter.
It's a special year in Rome because of the Papal Jubilee, which is celebrated every 25 years. This, called the Jubilee of Hope, began when Pope Francis opened the holy doors at all 4 papal basilicas, as well as at a prison in Rome. That's an important detail because at the Venice Biennale, which ended in November of 2024, Vatican City had its own pavilion for the very first time. The Biennale is an international contemporary art exhibition where countries choose artists to represent them in their own pavilions. Vatican City's artists were displayed in a women's prison on Venice's Giudecca Island, and Pope Francis was the first pope ever to attend the Biennale.
The Jubilee is a special pilgrimage year that we celebrate usually every 25 years. During the Jubilee, the faithful, the people, the Catholic, visit the 4 papal basilicas that are St. Peter in the Vatican, St. Paul outside the wall, St. Mary the Major, St. John Lateran. You have 4 holy doors that are the symbol of Christ. You pass the door, you pray, you follow Christ, you go for confession, you attend the Mass, you take the communion. It's a pilgrimage, and if you do all the visits, the Mass, the confession, your sins are forgiven. That's the meaning. The doors are the symbols of Jesus Christ. So the fellowship, the faithful people, they cross the door and they pray.
By the way, if I had to choose just one, I would choose San Giovanni Laterano, St. John Lateran. It's the oldest basilica in the Western world, and the massive bronze doors, which are now open, once belonged in the Roman Curia, and they date back to around 80 BCE, which means Julius Caesar would have walked through them.
But there are regular tourists anyway. They can do the regular tours. Anyway, you can do whatever you could do before. No problem. No. There are crowds, but not more than last year. After the COVID, the tourism really reboomed from Easter 2022, in my experience, in my opinion. In 22 and 23, 24, we had a big number of tourists. This year, I think, is not more than last year. Last year, according to the statistics, Italy has been the first more visited country in the world. For the first time, we have been the first. We always were the second after France.
So the Pope has died the day after Easter during the Jubilee year. This is a moment of history, right?
Exactly. It's a moment of history. We have seen him in St. Peter's Square Easter Day. It seems to be better. Unfortunately, he was not. We are very, very sad. But we have seen him until the last moment in the middle of the people. This was a pope that really the people loved. He wanted to stay in the middle of the people.
The day before, on Easter Sunday, American Vice President J.D. Vance met with the Pope.
I have a joke that I can tell you, then you can cancel. So there is a joke where you have Mr. Trump saying, well, what did you tell to the Pope? That he died after that he met you.
I asked Margherita to explain what will happen over the next few days leading up to the funeral of the Pope, and to cut right to the chase for anyone who has tickets for a Vatican tour on Saturday, April 26th. It will be canceled, but your money should be refunded.
So the Pope died yesterday morning in his room. He is living in Casa Santa Marta. Was not living in the Apostolic Palace. His body has been moved in the coffin, and tomorrow at 9, his body is going to be moved in St. Peter's Basilica. We are not sure if it's going to be exposed with the open coffin. He has not to do that. He said they didn't want to do that. We don't know. I think that he will be exposed. I think. Because the people want to see him. His body will be there, exposed into the basilica till Saturday morning, 26th, when at 10 o'clock they will do his funerals. So the funerals will be celebrated at 10 o'clock by the cardinals, by the deacon of the Cardinal Re, and by the other cardinals. The cardinals are now 253. They all have to come to Rome. We are waiting for them to arrive. Then he's going to be buried in the Basilica of St. Mary the Major, because that was his need. He wrote in his testament, in his will. He wrote the will already in 2023.
For future note, if you want to pay your respects to Pope Francis, he will be buried at St. Mary Major, Santa Maria Maggiore, which is in the Monti neighborhood, and that's also just a short walk from the Rome train station for those who may just be passing through quickly.
There are 5 more popes, including 4 very famous, very important popes. Pius V, Sixtus V, Paul V Borghese, Clemens VIII Aldobrandini. He wants to be buried there underground in a simple tomb. So the Pope's coffin will be in the Basilica from tomorrow 9 a.m. to 10 a.m., where they are going to celebrate the funerals. Then his body will be moved in the Basilica of St. Mary the Major. Then they will prepare the conclave. That is the election of the Pope. The conclave will start.
The conclave begins between the 15th to the 20th day following the prior Pope's death. So if you've got Vatican tickets for any day after May 5th, you're going to need to keep a close eye on the news. Also, you might want to watch the movie Conclave to better understand this moment in history. Margherita explains more.
The Pope originally in the first centuries was acclamated. So the community picked one person, good person, a man, always man, was acclamated Pope. Then from 1270, the Pope is elected by the cardinals that are the prince of the church. The number of the cardinals has changed a lot in history. Originally, there were only 18. Then they changed the number. The cardinals are now 253. But only the cardinals that are under 80 years old when the Pope dies, so they checked yesterday, there are actually only 135.
135 cardinals will be voting. So just to clarify, if you're a cardinal over 80, you can't vote for the Pope, nor can you be voted in as Pope. So there are only 135 cardinals who will actually be voting.
They are staying in Casa Santa Marta, which is the residence where the Pope was living. Then, at the moment of the conclave, the electors are staying together. They sleep in the rooms, but they meet in one room. They eat together, one plate for dinner, one plate for lunch. So they're not eating a lot. And they are making like arrangements. And then they enter in the Sistine Chapel, where the Chamberlain, which is the Camerlengo, which is a cardinal, which is in charge, now is the Cardinal Farrell. Cardinal Farrell is in charge for the administration of the church. He says extra omnes, all outside, and they stay inside, only the electors. They sit on tables and chairs that are prepared for the conclave. They are not there, so they have to prepare the Sistine Chapel. They are sitting there. They are writing the name on the ballots, and they have the Pope, the consensus, when one cardinal is receiving minimum 2/3 of votes. So now in total, they are 135. The Pope will receive minimum 90 votes.
And there's not a restriction on the amount of time.
Yes, there cannot be more the 34 votation. They can try 34 times. They vote 3 times a day, usually. 3 times a day, but not every day.
Okay. So it could take a long time if things are controversial within the conclave.
Yeah, but look, it's not a rule. They voted, they decided at the third session.
At the third session, that's when they voted. Okay. Well, because we don't want the museum, we don't want the Sistine Chapel to be closed for too long.
Exactly. But last time it stayed closed for, if I'm not wrong, like 13 days. A lot, believe me, because the visitors were very disappointed.
So here's the deal for those of you with tickets that are already purchased. And of course, if you bought tickets through a tour operator, they will be sending you instructions, so keep an eye open for their emails. When you do a tour of the Vatican, you start at the Vatican Museum, and you must walk through the entire museum to reach the Sistine Chapel, which is the last stop before exiting, to then visit St. Peter's Basilica. The conclave takes place inside the Sistine Chapel, so that will be closed, but the Vatican Museum will be open. So your tour will not be canceled, but it will be modified. And you can still enter the Basilica of St. Peter, which is where you'll find Michelangelo's Pietà, but there won't be the usual skip-the-line access for ticket holders. You'll have to wait in line.
Unless you book a pilgrimage, but you have to start a procession from Piazza Pia, the beginning of Via della Conciliazione. You need to carry a cross. You do the procession lasting maximum 20 minutes. You skip the line. You go through the security, but very quickly, and you go into the Basilica. But you have to make the pilgrimage.
You have to make the pilgrimage. Okay, so that's I like that. So for people that are in Rome, really for the Jubilee, for their devotion, there's a spiritual skip the line.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
That's really important.
Yes.
So do you think it's going to be a controversial choice for the new Pope?
I've heard that some rumors there will be an Asian, but I'm not sure. The Italian candidates are very good, but they say in the Vatican they do not want one more Italian.
Well, there is a candidate whose last name is Pizzaballa.
Pizzaballa is the Latino from Jerusalem. Another candidate is Zuppi. Zuppi, Matteo Zuppi, of Bologna. But we have a lot of Asians and we have also some Africans. So almost all the cardinals that are going to vote to be voted have been appointed by Francesco, by Pope Francis. We have very, very few cardinals that have been appointed by John Paul II or by Benedict. So probably the Pope, the new Pope will be the same idea of Pope Francis. A group of people, they say that the US are pushing to have not a progressist, but a conservative Pope. But there is a rumor. I'm not sure.
This is not something that people from beyond Catholic circles might realize. But yes, there is a very conservative push for Catholicism within the United States. And Papa Francesco was seen as a controversial figure, was not embraced by many very conservative Catholics. The Sistine Chapel is one of the top bucket list destinations in the world, and something that people know they should see. It's known for its frescoes, the great masterpieces by Michelangelo, but beyond that, people may not know much about it. It was created to be the private chapel of the Pope, and it's where the conclaves have been held since 1590.
Only from 1590, not before. Before they were making it in other churches. Some conclaves were made outside of Rome, some were made in France, some were made in Viterbo. But that's the tradition because that used to be the private chapel of the popes. They made some in the Quirinal because the popes moved in the Quirinal Palace, which is currently the presidential palace. They moved there in 1600 and they stayed there until 1870. Some conclaves were made in the Quirinal, not all in the Sistine Chapel, but they started to do that in the Sistine Chapel because that used to be the private chapel of the Pope. And originally the cardinals were sleeping and living inside of the chapel. They were sleeping all together there, but they were a small number. Now, when they started the conclave, they stay all together in Santa Marta with no devices, totally isolated, not cell phone, not computer, talking and deciding. They stay together, totally isolated. They eat and sleep in Santa Marta, then they are moved by car in the Sistine Chapel. Anyway, they do the conclave there because that used to be the private chapel of the Pope. This is not the private chapel anymore. Now the Pope has a chapel, had a chapel in Santa Marta where he's living. But anyway, this is still a working church. So now it's a tradition. And the church doesn't change the tradition, you know.
Well, it's also amazing to think about what a privilege it is that we can buy tickets and go to the Sistine Chapel if it was the private chapel.
Yes.
The Pope, and all of that incredible art. I mean, seeing those Michelangelo frescoes in person, even when it's super crowded, is still just such a knockout experience. I did the Keymasters tour with you at 6 a.m. and that was an unforgettable experience to be there with just 19 other people. So I like to think about all the cardinals sitting there all day, looking up at the ceiling and getting to look at Michelangelo.
Yes. We can also, the night private tour. Do you have a group like 10, 20? You are in the chapel on your own, only you and our group.
Our conversation here veered into planning a small tour in early November with Margherita showing us all of her favorite spots, including a private nighttime tour of the Sistine Chapel. If you're interested, let me know right away.
I suggest all the visitors to visit the other basilica, not St. Peter, but the others, because they are big. There are no lines. There are very, very, very short for the metal detectors security checks.
Yeah, if you're willing to get outside of the big sites, and especially if you do the Via Appia like we did when Ariana and Mario came up for the day, if you're willing to hire a driver for the day too, you can see the Via Appia, you can do the catacombs, you can see some of these spectacular Roman tombs, and then you can have a really good lunch in Testaccio.
Exactly, you can start with the Museum of the Walls. You remember, you walk in the walls, you walk on the Appian Way, you can visit the Basilica of Maxentius with the race course, the private race course of Maxentius that has never been used. They are free, not tickets. Then you go to the catacombs. You can drive, you can hiring a car, you can take a bus, or if the guests are good walkers, they can walk.
My last question. What do you think the cardinals are eating when they have lunch and dinner?
I don't know, but I can check.
Oh, yeah?
Look, yeah, I think that we can check. 1 second.
Oh, my goodness. I'm imagining, carbonara, cacio e pepe,
No, I don't think so.
saltimbocca.
Also, they are risotti, pasta al forno, lasagna, white meat like rabbit, chicken, seafood, grilled vegetables, seasonal fruits.
Where are you finding this information?
I googled it. I think the Repubblica.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, okay. So I'm not crazy. The Italian newspaper is also reporting on what they're eating. So I am a true Italian, I think, with my stomach.
Would you like me to send you the link?
Sure, please. Yeah. You were wondering what they were going to eat too, right? Yeah, of course you were. So over the next few weeks, we can watch history unfolding.
I think that we will decide pretty soon. Why? First of all, they cannot close the Sistine Chapel for a long time. Second, we need a pope for the pilgrims. Because every Saturday, we have a group of pilgrims coming to see the pope. This Saturday, for example, we have the teenagers. 3 weeks ago, we had the doctors responding. And also the LGBT groups. It will be, I think, quick. I know so many of our bespoke trip planning guests have cited Margherita herself as one of the highlights of their Italy trip. If you want to see Rome with Margherita, especially if you want to do something different and customized to your interests, get in touch. We can make it happen. Now, this is a free podcast, but people who subscribe via Substack get access to a monthly Q&A on Zoom, my monthly Ask Me Anything About Italy. But in addition, if you have an Italy trip forthcoming and you want to really get in the weeds of planning and have me review all of the details and give you my best suggestions, insider tips, restaurant recommendations, really strategize the entire trip for you, go to feasttravel.com and book a trip consultation. Thank you so much for listening.